Keith, am I supposed to
You
push
can,
anything else? Oh,
yeah.
here we go. No.
Oh, you're live.
Yep. Oh, here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the conversation. Sounds good. 30 seconds till showtime.
Okay.
Okay. Music starting.
Mm-hmm.
Hello and welcome to Living Strong, the Flip Side of Adversity. I am Dr. Virdra Jackson, the CEO and creative behind Living Strong Consulting. And welcome to another powerful conversation. I've been excited about this conversation all week long, and we're continuing our theme, our focus for this season of healing, health, and wellness. And I've shared with you, actually, I believe it was in the month of April when I spoke several times about our teen healing camp that we are trying to have in this summer in the Kensington area of Philadelphia. And I asked for your help. Well, I'm excited to share that I have the executive director behind the founding and the development of that camp and a whole lot more for a conversation on taking trauma healing to the streets. But let me tell you a little bit about her. Reverend Desiree Guyton is founder and executive director of Quest Trauma Healing Centers and the CEO of Healing Quest Counseling Villages. She's a licensed professional counselor, adjunct professor at Missio Seminary. She earned both her Master of Divinity and Master of Arts in Counseling from Biblical Theological Seminary. She has 27 years of experience serving youth and young adults as youth director, with 12 years in direct individual and family counseling. Reverend Des is co-author of Healing Wounds of Generational Trauma, the Black and White American Experience. And in 2013, she received a Global Trauma Recovery Institute training certificate. And in 2017, Master Trainer Trauma Healing Certificate from American Bible Society. Since 2014, she served with Global Trauma Recovery Institute as a team member for the Rwanda in Africa training of pastors and counselors as lay trauma healing. Her life verse is Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to thy own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. And her path has taken her into some of the hardest, underserved, underrepresented communities. And she's offering love, hope, and healing. So let's jump into a conversation. Welcome to the show.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Jackson. My heart is touched by your openness to allow me to come and just have this conversation. I'm so looking forward to it.
Well, it has been a privilege for me to be one of the newest members to the board of Quest Trauma Healing Centers. And the work, I've been drawn to the work before I even had the privilege of becoming a member of the board and supporting community liaisons. And I think what has had me so drawn and passionate about your work is how big your heart is for taking healing to intentional places
Mhm.
that are crying out for
Yes.
love. And so, as we get ready, I've had several guests talk about their definition of trauma, but I'd like to actually hear, how are you defining healing?
Oh, that's an awesome question because I think people feel that healing is this final place, and it's really a journey,
Mm.
right? And so it's a part of a journey first of recognizing that I've been wounded and given voice, right? And begin to regain power because trauma usually takes away power. A person's sense of self and maybe lose their voice and powerlessness. So healing's a part of first recognizing that I've lost this, that and to grieve. What trauma also always has grief
Mhm.
actively involved. So it's a part of this journey of first grieving, identifying what's happening, what happened, and power, and regaining that power.
Yes.
And that the past becomes less and less intense.
Yes.
And so for me, healing's a part and helping people to see it's a journey and
Mhm.
that healing's a part of this process. And so when a person says, I no longer having nightmares or I'm no longer having this, it's a part of these little journeys and steps that you can help them to begin to see that that's healing. Healing is not always this final place because a wound often still has a scar.
Yes. And that image of being on a journey and the powerful work that the entire team at Quest Trauma Healing Centers, it's literally coming alongside of people
Mhm.
as they're going on that journey, and the multiple emotions and experiences that they will have on that journey, to have trained individuals who can help them navigate that. I'd like for you to share a little bit more about what does Quest Trauma Healing Centers actually offer when we're talking about taking trauma healing to the streets?
Yeah, because the streets, and we all know, is very violent, right?
Mhm.
And streets also means home. Often people are experiencing complex trauma. So it's multiple trauma, right?
Mhm.
And so when we say we're taking trauma healing to the streets, we mean that we're helping the community to be empowered to create a safe and sacred space
Yeah.
for people to heal. And because everyone's not going to come to a therapist's office, right? But if I
Mhm.
can train the community, the church, organizations, places to first understand trauma, but also create this safe place where people can begin this trauma healing journey.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we do. We create safe spaces by training people locally and also create our, we help them have their healing groups and then we also
Mhm.
train them. So our goal is like within 2 years that particular community has began having master trainers and being able to have trainers and being able to multiply and continue that growth within that community. So that's our vision to see
So
that.
I hear this kind of process where uh, a team or a neighborhood or an organization can come together to begin to experience and go through the training to actually understand healing groups. And then through that process, begin to access the opportunities. So, how do then become a trainer? And then as they continue to equip their skills, the goal is for them to actually be self-sustaining, to continue to serve that community right where they are, so the community doesn't have to go somewhere else, but the heart of the work stays right with the people that they trust, the gatekeepers that are there. I just see such the true image of village.
Exactly. And so that's what our centers do, right? So our centers is where we're pouring in our resources and or getting others to support that may not that the community does not have
Mhm.
the financial resources. So we're bringing suburban or wealthier people to support this and be part of the solution, right?
Yes.
Instead of sitting back and saying, "Oh, this community is just really hurting."
Yeah.
Instead, let's pour together our resources. You may not be able to go, but if you could say, I want this community to begin to heal. So we pour into the churches in that area. We bring the pastors together, try to bring the organizations together and train lay people. This is the key.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a professional to help
Mhm.
people to walk in the journey,
Mm.
and then to help them to understand what does it mean to create safety, right? What does it mean to create to be a safe community? So part of our process is to help the church to be safe, or
Mhm.
help the community and organizations to be safe, right? And so like you said, if we could pour in, multiply with master trainers and trainers, then they can sustain. But also what we've been able to do in the last 2 years was connect to universities and seminaries and provide individual and family counseling at a minimal cost
Mm.
to the
Mhm.
people that have already gone through the healing group and needed continual individual support. So,
Powerful.
yeah.
So, you mentioned in that last explanation, you mentioned the word church,
Mm,
and I know that I have been in and around um, ministries that are beginning to really recognize the level of trauma within their congregations.
mhm.
What message do you have for churches that you want them to understand about the needs that are in their congregations and opportunities for them to learn how to support?
Yeah, so, my favorite line to pastors is, one of the reasons why you can't have good church meetings is often you have people who have trauma that's
Mhm.
in your church meeting, right? So they're overreacting, and then why ministries also seem difficult is because if people, especially in certain urban settings, they have complex trauma. So they have trauma, they can't go into school, going to work, they're heightened. So their threat
Mhm.
system is overly active. And so they're in hyper mode, or what we call hyper
Mm.
vigilant, or very overreactive, right? So when they come to church, if they haven't learned how to calm their threat system,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So there's people who really seek to really love God. Most people really want to do right. They want, and then you wonder why they are overreacting or having anger episodes or seeing something, because trauma shapes how a person's perception can begin to impact their perception, how they see themselves in the world. Because why? The world become totally unsafe, right? And so if the world's unsafe, then even though I know God is loving and everything, though everything's hyper, right? So I try to help pastors to say, hey, you want less people to come in your office? You need to train the church to be a safe community. So when you look at a person, you're not saying, oh, she's strange, she's weird, leave her alone. Instead, what happened?
Yeah.
Okay, what happened? How can we help her on this journey and begin to say, let's heal. Let's
Mhm.
help her on, help him and her
Mhm.
on a healing journey. And that's the church. And if everyone's on this journey, because pastors have trauma too.
I was hoping you would say that. I was hoping you would say that. Healthy leadership, recognizing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
you help them to see that they make some decisions that's really based out of their past and their pain and their hurt, right? And so we can create safe spaces for the leaders to walk through, and that's what we do. We really
Mhm.
try to help the church or even organizations, their leadership go through it, so they can say. And let me tell you, I've had pastors say, "Des, I'm so glad I did this before the pandemic.
Mm.
I was successfully able to take my church through it."
Wow.
And
Wow.
they said it was the best tool that they could have ever gone through, is to be able to be a leader who understand pain and hurt.
Wow. A leader that understands pain and hurt. I think about and our message is going around the world. So I want to paint a little bit of
Mm,
context for those who aren't physically in Pennsylvania. We have been experiencing an outcry of pain and hurt in our streets.
yes.
A lot of it has been at the hands of young people.
Mhm. Yes.
And if we could get more leaders to continue to understand, how do I navigate? How do I serve? How do I help people navigate their pain and hurt, we could begin to
Yes.
create some shifts and change. What have you learned about working so closely with young people who are screaming out for love?
I transitioned from a youth pastor to a therapist for a reason. I had over 300 youth teens in Bible study on Tuesday nights, right? Because we created a place that was safe. We had 1,000, oh, close to 1,000 teens coming on Friday nights, right? So what we did was we understood that they were hurting. This is years ago, right? So that transition, but I was learned that I needed additional skills. I
Mm,
had kids who were really going through depression, going through ADHD, and going through a lot of trauma at home. And I
mhm,
felt like I didn't have the skills. I was actually hurting them, right?
mm,
I've also learned that sometimes we really hurt people with Bible beating and not having the clinical or giving them some skills that they needed. And that's why this is so deeply passion of mine,
mhm.
is to help people to understand we can train lay people to have better tools
Yeah.
to walk alongside. And the biggest tools are be quiet and listen, right?
As we as human, we struggle to listen, right?
Yes.
But can I zone in on a word you just said, layperson? Because I feel like I literally am in my mind hearing people say, well, I'm not a therapist. I know the Bible. I'm not a therapist. I'm here to be able to deliver the word. Or someone who is, I know music. I know how to lead worship. I'm not a therapist. So now I've got to be a therapist too. What do you say to those who are feeling like, well, that's not my area?
Mhm.
What how do you help them lessen their fear?
Right. First, I think everybody needs to learn what it means to be a safe person, period.
Mm,
Right? Because safe people, people that are not safe, right? They cut you off. They say, oh, I went through that, and they project what they went through onto that particular person, or they just kind of say, oh, you can get through it. Here, read this verse, or this is how I got through it. That's the worst thing you can actually do,
mm,
right? So, what does it mean for me to be safe and sit in the tension of the pain of the person that's with me? So that's a father to a daughter, that's a mother to a son, that's everybody. The pastor to this lay people is learning to sit with the hurt and the pain of someone else. And that's, to me, is being more like Jesus. Right? Jesus,
yes.
and we say, well, he was God, but he was also 100% human and didn't give pat answers.
Mm,
He sat with the woman at the well, right? He sat and cried and wept over Lazarus. He felt the pain before he did all these miracles, right? He felt it. And we as a people have to understand we have to be safe.
mhm.
Right. And so the things that I hear from pastors is, Des, you taught me to shut up, right? You taught
Okay,
me,
I love it.
right, to ask permission to pray. And you taught me to ask permission to touch and not say, oh, come over here and give me a hug. No, you have to understand what it means, everyone, to
Mm.
become safe. So you don't have to become a facilitator, but I believe you need to become a safe Christian.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is tweetable right there. I need people. I need that's a whole word right there, to become a safe Christian and recognizing that first, I heard you say we have to be willing to recognize and acknowledge our own hurt places.
Absolutely.
So we stop projecting that on others or even having the expectation that because something worked for me, you just need to do this.
Mhm.
But actually allowing people to feel safe and actually seen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because trauma takes away their voice and power, and then you just do the same,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Instead of being safe, weep with them, cry with them,
Mm,
and say, I don't know. I don't
mhm,
know, just like you don't know,
mhm.
but I'm here. And Jesus is here because I'm sitting with you, and you just, can I just be with you? And we have a hard time, and I had a hard time learning that that is being a Christian. I don't have to beat them up with the Bible. I don't have to tell, I have to sit with, I can sit with their doubt. I could sit with their hurt. I could sit with their pain and not be offended that they were
Mm.
said, I'm mad at God.
Mhm.
But instead, I created a safe place for them to say, I'm mad with God.
Right.
Right?
'Cause he already knows
He
it.
already knows, right?
Right.
Right? And if my son got hit by a bus, which, and
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
would be like, Lord, what's up? Right?
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think we need to be able to say, that's okay.
Yes.
Instead, we feel like we got to give a word.
Mm. Mhm. And not acknowledge the pain.
Exactly.
It as you shared at the top of this, it's a journey.
It's a journey.
And people will not go on a journey with someone that they don't feel safe, that they don't feel seen, that they don't feel heard with.
Ask people why they leave church. They don't leave church a lot. They leave church for these very reasons.
Mhm.
They didn't feel safe enough to tell someone something, or they felt hurt by the reaction or the response of the church.
Mhm. Mhm. It's an opportunity for us to, in some ways, um, I feel like the old continued statement of it's not religion, it's relationship. And that can become cliche ish when our go to is someone is showing up with very real pain
Yeah.
and hypervigilance, not actually able to focus on the scripture that you just gave them, and they're being met with shame or
Yes.
guilt, but actually, relationship has some very key elements. Can you share with us
Mm.
some key strategies that Quest tries to help people understand? You share creating safety, but are there other key principles in healthy relationship
Mhm.
in this journey of a healing walk?
Yeah. So if I understand your question, you're saying
Mhm.
how can we
Mhm.
have built healthier relationships for people, right?
Yes.
And as one is understanding trauma, right? So just I think that's a big thing, is helping people to put on new glasses, right? Then understanding their role. So that means as a listener, we role play, we do things like that to help them to become better listeners. But then also understand that people are grieving a loss. And that, so if you're a rape victim, you lost something, right? So
Yes.
helping people to understand, and then reinterpreting forgiveness and helping in that relationship, just being able to walk alongside of a person that is very angry and feeling unforgiving, and instead of beating them up, understand it's a journey, right?
Mhm.
So relationally, it's so I always like to give this example, if that's okay.
Yes.
If a person broke their leg and they came to the church, we had this happen at my church, and then the elevator broke. The deacons lined up and literally were picking up wheelchairs and bringing people into the church and carrying them up a series of steps, moved out, chairs, everything for people to be comfortable when they got a broken leg. Well, when a person's struggling with mental illness,
Mm.
do we make those same concessions?
Mm.
Instead, we run,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Oh, she's bitter. Oh, she bit my leg,
Mhm.
my mouth. Instead of saying, baby, I'm here, even if you're going to be upset with me, right?
Mhm.
And understanding your role in that. So relationally, it is us being so in our own healing, right? Because what happens is it taps into our own insecurities and our own wounds,
All the
right?
way true.
But also, if I'm on a journey, I'm realizing, ooh, that hurt, but I'm okay enough to have good assertive skills, not passive but not aggressive, but have good assertive skills, and having the ability to manage my own emotions.
Yes.
So part of
Huge.
relational is that I'm able to manage my own emotional and my own woundedness, and being able then to walk alongside someone else. And
Mhm.
that to me is where the church has really fallen short. And my mentor
Mhm.
said something about the best over 20 something years ago. Dr. Diane Lambert, one of the people that's highly trained, said
Mhm.
this: trauma healing is a new mission field.
Yes. 100. 100%. And so you mentioned your mentor. I'm curious, what was a key pivot? We call our show The Flip Side of
Mhm.
Adversity. What was a key pivot or flip moment that this became a movement? for you?
Realizing the kids I was working with,
Mm,
especially in Camden. I was a children's director for Urban Promise Ministry, and I really felt helpless in some areas because these kids have multiple trauma. I mean, and we know we created a safe place, but
mm,
to see that struggle.
mm.
And so when a child doesn't have safety and the world becomes totally unsafe, they can become numb, two extremes, numb, and then they don't care. And that's why it's easy for them to
Yes,
commit murder, right? Or
yes,
do things, right?
yes.
Or they become extreme and they just have no emotional regulation. So then
Mhm,
we want to drug them up with ADHD and all. And it's trauma. It's trauma
mhm.
and how the brain is responding and trying to survive. Now I know that.
Yes.
So the flip side of that was the adversity of how do I present Jesus? How do I love on them, knowing that they're going home to get beat, knowing that they're not going to have they're fending for themselves to have food on the table, knowing their struggle. I felt extremely helpless, Dr. Jackson.
Mhm,
But God
mhm,
spoke to me and said, this is just some things I need you to get a little more tight in this
mhm.
and help others to learn to walk side of. And now I have the young people, now they're grown. So they're 35, 40 years old, college grads. I got one is a millionaire,
Yes,
that
yes.
has gone through and say, you were there. And I didn't
Yeah.
have no major, I had no major skill. I just provided
Mhm,
safe places and love and open up my home and open up other people to be able to support them as well. And so
mhm,
creating mentorship and creating loving, and now they can became safe. Some, not everybody,
mhm.
but learning to just be.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask a sticky question, okay? Because I also want to be able to address some things that I know people murmur in the background. So then are you saying with this approach that that in some ways we're going to allow behavior that we know is sinful, or allow behavior like allow people, because we're creating this safe space, how where's the balance in actually continuing to have accountability for what we know to be um, pursuing a healing, but also a spiritual journey in sanctification?
This is a great question because the material is both mental health best practices and biblical principles, right?
Yes.
And I didn't use the word passive communication for a reason. I said assertive. So assertive says, you just hurt me by the way you acted.
Yes. So
And
naming it.
naming it,
Not just
right?
ignoring it.
Not just
Mhm.
ignoring it, right?
Mhm.
I'm helping that person to begin to regulate. I'm helping them. And through both mental health best practices, right? And biblical principles. It doesn't mean that we're leaving them out there. Most people who experience trauma and they've done things, they know they hurt you. And they actually, what people don't understand is a lot of time the anger we see is actually they're angry at themselves.
Mm. Yeah.
And people don't really catch that because I'll say it in therapy all the time. Says, who were you really mad at? I was mad at myself, Miss Daz.
Mhm.
So to hear they
Mhm.
destroyed the whole house and the parent thinking, oh, he disrespectful, he just mad. No, the kid was actually mad at himself for not being able to regulate.
Mm. Yes.
And so what people don't understand is you don't have to lay on conviction. 9, 10 times they're already laying it on themselves. So a person who could begin, and this is the gospel, isn't it? This
Yeah,
is the heart of
yes,
the
yes.
gospel, right? Is that Jesus came to die for our sins and shame. But what people fail to realize, he died for the sin that people did to us. And when people do things to you, you begin to carry a shame that doesn't belong to you. And so Jesus says, I take that from you if you help me. And so helping them to understand that when they're unemotionally regulated and they're doing those sinful things at church, part of why healing groups are so important, they begin to release that shame
Oh,
and they release the guilt. We hear this all the time. I took my burden to the cross
yes.
and I
Yes.
feel lighter.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel lighter. I have master trainers now who would tell you 3 or 4 years ago, they were that person.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it.
You know?
I love it. So we need to take a break.
Yeah.
I know I told you in my social media post, when she gets started, you are going to be on the edge of your seat, hanging on to every word. But I don't want us to take a break without giving you an action step. So if you are on my social media pages, you have an opportunity to support this work. We are in the middle of a fundraising campaign to bring trauma healing to the streets and specifically to support teens. If you are on my social media pages, the link to be a help in that fundraising opportunity is in my comment section right now. Help us help teens who are crying out in the streets. You can partner with us by absolutely clicking the link that is posted in our social media comment section, as well as going to, what is the website?
Quest Trauma Healing Centers, Quest THC.org or questmovement.org.
There you have it, and we'll be right back.
Yeah. I forgot they could go teen trauma healing as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. So we have a quick commercial happening. I want to thank everyone who has joined the conversation. Hello, Chayla. Hello, Dr. Curry. Hello, Sandra. Hello, Zora and Ez and Carol. Alisa? Wonderful. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, hello, Denisha? Denishan? Beautiful. Forgive me if I do not say your name correctly, but I want to honor the fact that you are
Yes.
in this space. We appreciate your support to this conversation.
Yes.
And now I need you to make sure, if you have not already, share this conversation from this page onto your page so that we can multiply the opportunity to get the word out, to support those who are unaware of the pain that they're in and can actually access support for healing, as well as support the campaign, the fundraising campaign. The links are in my comment section. Please share, share, share. This is your opportunity to be the hands and feet to support this powerful movement. We appreciate you. Thank you. 30 seconds. Welcome back. We have been having a powerful conversation with Reverend Desiree Guyton. And Reverend Des has been walking us through an understanding that healing is not a destination, it is a journey. And we have an opportunity to be safe for people in healthy relationships. And so, continuing that conversation, you have traveled the globe doing this work. And I'd like to understand, what have you learned, good and bad, from working in some of the most underserved communities?
One of the biggest things I learned was that lay people can learn and create safe spaces, right? Because an American mindset is you go to a therapist, you go to a pastor, you go to an individual, whereby seeing it globally and seeing people just circle up in the park, and seeing pastors and people be able to heal. That's what I wanted to bring back, because I learned that overseas in Rwanda, watching, here we are training, and I'm sitting there, wait a minute. We having this right here in the States, right? And then I was looking at the children's material, which was birthed out of child soldiers. And I'm sitting there, the streets of Philly is child soldiers, right?
Wow.
And we tend to, as Americans, think we're not uh, like people like Rwanda or Kenya or Congo, but we're experiencing similar things. And so my
Mhm.
heart started to realize when communities and villages come together,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and we begin to see. I'm telling you, Rwanda is one of the most incredible places to be and to watch healing. I mean, that to me, when you realize you're the person who killed your family lives 2 doors down from you,
Mm.
and you forgive them and you have relationship. I mean, it's just powerful to see Hitus and Tutsis together in ministry and worshiping together. And it's such a small country. They a lot of times they know who has hurt them,
Mhm.
and to see joy and forgiveness and at its core, it's that
Yeah.
just helped me to say, wait a minute, this has to come back to America. So I would say that's probably the greatest thing of understanding that we are a part of a larger pain in the world, and that Jesus is still the answer, right? And
Yes.
that answer though is within community. And I think we just in America tend to have lost some of that.
Mm.
And so one of my heart is to walk the streets and be with pastors and try to understand what's really going on. What's the stakeholders? Who's really? That's what I learned in America
Mhm.
in my overseas is that every experience is a cultural experience. So just because I'm African American, I walk in the street doesn't mean I understand West Philly,
Right.
right? We tend to have that mindset as Americans, right? If I'm Latino and I'm in Latino communities, I understand. No,
Mhm.
every experience
Yeah.
is a cross cultural experience, and so I would say that's something I really took away is that healing can happen within community when you train lay people, and that every experience is a cross cultural experience.
Mm. So I'm going to ask on the other end of the continuum, what was something difficult
Mm.
that you discovered that you can now become a part of the solution to? What's something bad you're like, oh, this is not right. We're getting this part wrong.
I think so much of it, because I sit in pain, as a therapist and
Hmm.
and working with churches, that what we just get so I think what we get wrong is that systems often fall apart.
Hmm.
There's no perfect system, and that we are a part of systems. That sometimes I think where people miss that I'm always checking myself is I have power. And if we understand that every person has an element of power and how we use that power is so radically important. And so I'm often concerned how we use power in America. We are very, you step into streets of even South America areas as American. Once they know you're American, there's an element of power.
Hmm.
And so understand that every relationship I'm in, I have an element of power, and I need to be conscious of that. So I think I seeing how misuse of power around the world,
Hmm.
right,
Hmm.
around the world, but we as Americans are really blind to that. And if we would be more conscious of how we understand our power, church leaders, organizations, how our systems fall, admitting to those, watching how our systems handle power, watching how our systems hurt. I think that is so very, very important.
Yeah. Can you share a bit or share testimony or some reflections on how you've helped teens
Mm.
reconnect with their power?
Yeah. That I think that's what lights
I
me up,
know, look,
man.
your whole
Like,
face. I wish the Voice America community could see how her entire face just lit up when I asked that question.
I'm going to share. I did the older teen boys. That's my favorite group. So, and to have them start to admit, they were part of gangs. How they one of the young men was about 16 years old, almost got his eye gashed out, and to watch him when to go through the journey that week, and at the end,
Mhm.
just big hugs saying, "I'm not as angry. I understand my anger. I understand my pain. I know now to talk about it. I know to, here we are no longer going to release this young man back to the streets the same way.
Yes. I'm no longer as angry. That is a powerful statement.
Right.
Because that shifts my decision making when
Absolutely.
I'm reaching for a weapon or when I'm reaching for a fight. That shifts how I think in those moments. The ability to better manage my emotions. How important
Yeah.
are emotions and emotional regulation?
Absolutely important, right?
Hmm.
But we become emotionally regulated. So I always say Satan beats us up in our secrets, right? And so for this young man, all the things that he was bottled up, he was able to begin to release. He even said, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. Of course, right? And our rule is the first day we know your mom and grandmom and people made you come. If you don't want to stay, it's cool. You know, we have a 99.5 success rate in attendance, but the one who didn't couldn't come was because of work, right? That
Uh-huh.
one day they missed. So this young man is releasing his hurt and pain,
Mm.
right? And so emotions are important because what happens is the brain, right? You when trauma hits, it overstimulates the limbic system, right? And so when that gets overly stimulated, it shuts down the frontal cortex, which is
Mhm.
where we do our thinking,
Yes.
right? So if you begin overly emotional, it goes down what we call down the vagus nerve, right? And
Mhm.
you have emotional irregulation. So it's so important because part of trauma healing is healing the brain, right? It's helping the
Yes.
person once they begin to understand what's happening. We actually teach our teens that.
I was hoping you would say
Yeah,
that.
we actually teach them what's
What's
happening.
happening?
Right. And when they begin to understand, oh wow, they begin to see those adjustments. And so that lights me up is a little bit of tools we've been able to give them in these camps. And then for them to start using them, or for them to say, I need to go home and tell my mom I was molested. I need to go home
Yes.
and let this pain out.
Yes.
That to me is what we're all about. And
Mm.
because once they begin to release it, you could see the regulation starts to happen. They can begin, and we give them the tools of breathing. We give them the tools of stopping and thinking before
Mhm.
you're reacting, and we're giving them these tools. But those tools don't mean anything if I haven't dealt with, if I haven't begun to release it, right? And
Yes.
so giving them that safe space to talk.
Can I ask you a question
Mhm.
around that comment of releasing it? I
Right.
had a conversation with a group earlier this week, and we were having a powerful dialogue. It was a healing moment. People were sharing, and one of the participants said, "But I don't want to go back because it's too painful. So that's why I just keep pushing forward." What do you tell people who actually, as you shared, the devil beats us up in our secrets? It has been a secret so long that they actually don't even want to. Literally, she said, I don't want to go back there.
Mhm.
What do you say in response to that?
Yeah, there's two theories, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
therapist, there is a whole movement of not doing that type of therapy, and I agree to a certain level
Mm-hmm.
because that person doesn't need to go to their past. They need to learn what's happening in their bodies. They
Yeah.
need to learn to
Yeah.
regulate first.
Yeah.
They need to learn all of what we call um, somatic
Somatic sensory. Mm-hmm.
sensory. They need to really go through that journey,
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness,
Yeah.
and then once they get through and be able to begin to manage, they will begin to slowly let out the areas that they need to let out. And that's the part of the journey,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, everyone responds differently. And even with our teens, we don't say they got to express, but teens are expressive usually
Yes.
in that they want to be known. That's that age group. So creating that safe space for them to say, and most of them say, I'm not going to tell my business. But then when we create the safe space, and some of
Mm-hmm.
them don't do it necessarily in a group, but they may find a safe adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so over lunch, they want to share
Mm-hmm.
that. And then once again, it's not that we want them to be re traumatized, right? We want them to have a safe place to say, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And I
And
don't
that
know.
release valve,
Yes.
the pressure of holding that
That
in.
in.
And there's a release valve and specific strategies and approaches to release that pressure.
Right.
I cannot believe how fast this time is going by. There are so many questions I still have, but I want to make sure people understand what Quest Trauma Healing Centers offers in their training opportunities. So
Mhm.
can you give us a couple of the titles of either online or in-person trainings that people can begin to research and look to you for?
Sure. So first, we offer what are a regular initial equipping, and so you could become a basic trauma healing facilitator as a apprentice. So you go through that training, and then once you do 2 healing groups, you come back to an advanced. So that same model goes for our teens, our children, and our adults, and
Mhm,
our generational trauma. And so there's also material that you don't have to be trained. We don't talk about that
right.
as often, but there's some materials. We have a 4-day, what they call unstuck, that you can do with teens that you don't necessarily have to be trained. But we prefer people to be trained, right?
Mhm,
Because we want you to be
mhm,
a good listener, and a good a person equipped.
yeah.
So you can go to our website, and we are most of our training for the fall for the summer is done because we're prepping for the camp. But we do gear back up come September. We start our trainings again so people can begin, and so we do that online and in
Mhm.
person.
Tell us more about the camp because I want to make
Mhm.
sure people fully understand the opportunity to be able to be a partner
Mhm.
in supporting the camp and the amazing outcomes that you've already been able to see.
Yeah, so the camp is all day. So it's
Mhm,
literally the kids arrive at 8:30. We feed them breakfast and lunch. And they're there to 4:30, 4:35. They experience 2 of the lessons. So there's 10. They build on them. They build on each other. They engage a larger story of a young man who witnessed his best friend get shot,
mm,
and his it's not even his half sister. It's a another young lady who lives in his home because his mom and the
mhm,
dad are together, and there's domestic violence in the home. There's alcoholism in the home, as well as this young lady mother died, and so she's cutting and depressed. So the kids get to engage in this larger story that helps them to start to say, "This is what happened to me. This is what's going on," and so in those lessons, there's 10 where we talk about feelings, brain, we give them these tools throughout as they are engaging this larger story. So they go through 2 of those lessons, and then those lessons are very interactive. So they're learning how to regulate through art exercises, right? And different things that they're doing. So these lessons are 2 to 3 hours long. They didn't have lunch, and then we have a lot of breaks because we're dealing with
mhm,
teenagers, so there's breaks in
mhm.
between so they can go out and play basketball and chase each other around. That's what they can do,
Yes.
things like that to and that's part of that regulation,
Yes,
right?
it
And so
is.
then they come back in. So that's how all day is basically they're paired up by age, by sex. That's all the female girls between certain age groups are all. So we serve 14 to 18. And so they're divided up like the 13 or 14, I mean, 14 and 15-year-olds are one group, and 15 and 16 and 17, 18 is another group. But they're divided by male, female. And we have
And
50% males
and
in
how
ours.
many days?
Oh, it's 5 days straight.
Mm,
Yes. And I know people say, well, that's an investment
mhm,
that seems high in cost because we pay for the food. We help them get for some of them to get there. We have to stipend staff and different
mhm.
people. But it's so worth it when you're knowing that you're sending 30 kids out. And what's so beautiful is I'm still hearing when I go to the pastors, because there was multiple churches and kids that were in the community, that the kids themselves kept a community going through text messaging. They became their own support network at schools and things like that. So we know that that's still going on because we've heard from the youth pastors and teachers in the local community that those 30 kids have really bonded.
Wow.
Yeah.
They created their own kind of village after such an intense and restorative experience. They didn't want it to end. Yes.
Yeah.
And so is it only 1 week?
Yes.
1 week, 5 days, all day, food included, and even recognizing that they are teens, allowing them to be young, but actually allowing them to release that pressure valve of things that are actually getting in the way of their ability to learn, their ability to create healthy relationships,
Mm.
manage their emotions, all of that. Oh, I tell you, I know you're waiting to figure out how can you get involved? How can you support this? So, Reverend Des, please walk people through what you need in order to make this happen.
Right. We really need an additional $10,000 to make this happen. And so people's financial gifts are so very, very important. And so we ask you, please visit our site. I think there are links in the comments. Please give. And also consider being an ongoing giver, a monthly donation, because we continue to train people, support churches. Our centers are on the ground, and we really want to continue the effort in which we're doing to multiply this. Then also consider praying for us, and just that because the enemy loves to come against us. So please, if you're a prayer warrior, pray for us. But then also consider advocating and bringing this to your community. If you say, "Oh, you know what? I don't have the time for the training," you may not, but you know people who could. And so, become a part of Quest. Join, subscribe to us so you can become a part of our conversations. We have monthly meetings and things that you can join in and just learn more about trauma and connect. So we mentor people. We don't just train them and leave them out there. We have what we call Q Academy, where people can continue to grow and learn more about trauma and continue to learn from professionals about how to continue to grow as lay leaders in the community.
And I'd like for you to share your website again for
Okay.
people to be able to know how to connect and actually see
Mhm.
the menu of resources that you provide.
Yes. So it's questmovement.org. And also, if you just want to specifically go to a particular program, you can go to teen trauma healing, or children trauma healing. And those are separate, more appealing websites for our teens, but they connect, so you connect to the main site through that as well. But that's a great way to connect. But questmovement.org is the main site, and you can definitely go there and to donate and subscribe and get on our list and stay in communication with us. Also, join our Facebook. We have a Quest Trauma Healing Center's Facebook group, and also a group, so you can join in,
Mhm.
and we correspond and communicate that way as well.
Wow. I want to thank you for how open, supportive, and clear
Mm.
this message has been. I think the moment you said, we must become safe Christians for people, I think coming out of the 3 years of a pandemic,
Mm.
of being behind screens, being behind masks, being isolated, people want to be seen.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
always ask my guests in the last few minutes of time that we have to think about someone who is listening.
Mm.
They just by chance received the link
Mhm.
and they are feeling lost.
Mm.
They're feeling unheard. What would you share with someone who's in that place?
Yes, I want to share that you are not alone, okay, and that reach out, get connected, walk that journey. There's hope. And there's a place of release. And I really would love to see you connect. And you can hit me up directly, because we probably have a facilitator or someone in the area that would come and meet with you. That's the beauty of a large community of facilitators. People are so compassionate that they're willing to meet with people one on one, and just encourage you and get you connected to a healing group, and so you're not alone. And really, I'll even personally contact
Yeah.
you, because it just, I don't want people to suffer alone. And so let us connect you to someone
Yeah.
safe.
Yes. I absolutely felt that. I felt that. I
Mhm.
feel as I do this work, I work with schools that are working with young people who are in a lot of pain and adults who are trying to navigate young people's pain and not even pay attention to their
Oh.
own. And so recognizing we're not alone,
Yeah.
that there are resources available, and going to questmovement.org is one of the first steps to be able to see resources, to get connected, and absolutely with everything that's happening within our community, within the hearts of our young people, when we hear that there is an organization that desires to spread love and healing, we cannot sit and be indifferent.
Mm.
I think about um, former Representative John Lewis's statement that our children will ask us, "What did you do? What did you say?"
Mhm.
You have an opportunity to be a part of a powerful movement. Don't let this moment go by. Thank you,
Thank you.
Reverend Des. This was
Yeah.
amazing.
No, thank you.
Your wealth of knowledge and your heart continues
Mm.
to just draw me in. And again, it's an honor to be a part of the board. And if you have not had an opportunity to connect, find us on social media. You can go to Quest Trauma Healing Centers on Facebook. And you can also look at Dr. Virdra Jackson. And in both places, ways you can connect, it'll be right there. So, we are continuing our last few weeks of talking about healing, health, and wellness. It's an opportunity for us all to continue this journey. Your trauma is not your destiny. It's actually not even your stopping place. It is a place that you might find yourself right now, but that's not your end,
Mm.
and God's not done. So we welcome the opportunity to continue to connect with you, support with you right here, same place, same time, right here on the flip side. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Jordan. Same to you. He said, have a great day. Facebook community, thank you so much for all of your support. I am asking that you make sure you share. Not only the link to this conversation, but also the link to the fundraiser. We have $10,000 that we need to raise to bring trauma healing to the streets and to provide an opportunity of health, wholeness, and healing to young people who literally are looking for a safe place and safe people to connect with. Will you be that person? Will you be that person? So I always ask one question for our guests that just Facebook gets. Do you have time for one
Sure.
more? Wonderful. So, because I have actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 that we didn't even get to. This conversation was so amazing. I just sat here and listened. So, what if I'm a church and I feel like I'm not prepared, but I want to be? What do I do?
So first, you can go to our site. We have a great little button there that says you want to learn more. You want to have a consultation with me. You can schedule right on my calendar because I would love to talk to you about that. The thing is, we want you to make sure you have the buy-in of leadership. What we've seen is people who have a heart, they'll take the training and then get frustrated with the church because they couldn't implement. So I highly recommend that the pastor or assistant pastor take the training with you. Don't let them get away with not to. And it's life changing for them. I'm telling you, there hasn't been a pastor that hasn't taken it who has not really almost become one of our sinners because once they've taken it, they go, oh my God, this is the new mission field. This is where I needed to be, because we do cover things like domestic violence, sexual assault, all these different things that they can bring back to the church, that in the sense of healing groups. And so, yeah, please connect let's have a one-on-one conversation,
Mhm.
and making sure that we help you become a safe place and a
Yeah.
safe, yeah. And we
Bec
could do a one-on-one, like even a whole convening, what we call
Yeah.
a awareness session right at your church. And yeah, and so
Nice.
we'll bring a team in to do awareness session or workshop, so everyone could kind of get a feel. So if you feel like you don't know how to approach it, if you can get the workshop or a couple hours, we'll come in and actually take everyone to a brief lesson, and they could be exposed to it as well. And so we can help you market it.
Yes, and I know you mentioned it in the, episode,
Mhm.
but I just want you to restate it again because you shared the curriculum is not only rich in therapeutic approaches, it also pairs that with biblical principles. Can you just
Absolutely.
expound on that just a little bit more for the churches that are listening?
Yeah, so what we do is it's an emerging of mental health and biblical principles. So what I love about it, it's not preachy, but
Hmm.
it has that great foundation. So for example, when people start talk about why it's important to share your
Hmm.
emotions, we will go through, they break up in groups, and you're actually going to read about Elijah, you're going to read about Jesus, you read about the different people, and the question we ask is, how did they express their emotion, right?
Hmm.
And so I don't know if you really realize, like, Jonah had a full-blown adult tantrum with God, right? And so we bring out this, but people don't realize it in the context. Jonah was in a traumatized situation. The Ninevites were wiping people. I mean, so people don't understand, like, this was genocide. You're asking this man to go to the people who created, was wiping him out, to go and minister. So people don't understand that was
Hmm.
I would have said no too, right? So,
Right, right, right. That's a
I
trauma
mean, it was a
response.
trauma
Hmm.
response. And
Hmm.
so to understand, so those are the type of things we talk about that people don't kind of often.
Hmm.
And so for the teens, though, what I love about their material is they go through this story of the young man and the young woman, the teenagers, but they also go through the story of Joseph. So it's parallel with that. And so it's not it's helping people, it's helping you to get the skills that is both biblical and mental health that's merging together. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I know you do too. I know you do too. So, absolutely, I will post one more time in not only the chat in this moment, but there will be a separate um post tomorrow, specifically giving continued information and ways and strategies for you to be able to support this movement. Thank you, Reverend Des.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you.
No, I appreciate you, and I appreciate your audience. This is
Yes.
because I know that they follow you,
Oh,
and that means that they're trying to grow and heal
mm.
and take this to the streets. Even
Ah.
though it's not a street, but I know that's what it is.
Yes,
So I'm
indeed.
excited.
So have a great one. Same
Yes.
time, same place next week. See you then.